Hey everybody, and welcome to today's virtual field trip. Thank you for joining us out at Loxahatchee Slough Natural Area. Just wanted to go ahead and reiterate some new rules for this field trip. You must be signed on with your student district account for Palm Beach County. You can ask questions by using Poll Everywhere. There is a banner that is scrolling across the bottom, so you are more than welcome to respond by web at pollev.com/pbcerm216, or you can text pbcerm216 to the number 37607 to ask Benji your questions. We hope you guys have a wonderful virtual field trip, that you guys still stay engaged. And remember, we may have some technical difficulties, we may hear some wind, and we will resolve it as we go. So Benji, go ahead and take it away.
Hey everybody, I'm so glad to be standing here in Loxahatchee Slough Natural Area and bringing a little bit of the amazing things that are happening right now in the springtime to you guys virtually, wherever you're logging on from. So I am really excited today for two reasons. Number one, we're at one of my favorite places, Loxahatchee Slough, where there is so much going on right now. It's springtime, birds are breeding, there's fish everywhere in certain places. The second reason that I'm really excited is I got my second COVID shot yesterday. So now in Florida, I read that 16 and over can get vaccinated. If you haven't looked into it and talked to your parents about it, please do that. It's so important. That being said, I'm dragging a little bit today, but I'm really stoked to be here with you guys. We've got some awesome scientists, and Kyla is back from our last trip. One of your peers, one of the students that's your age, and she's going to help us learn about the swamp here in Loxahatchee Slough. So why am I not standing in the swamp like I normally am? We want to talk about several things today. I know you guys have testing coming up, so we're going to kind of talk broad brush about things like the food web, anthropogenic effects, that means man-made effects, different kinds of plants, photosynthesis, touching on all these different topics, and hopefully having some fun and catching some critters and putting them in the hand on the way. I promise you we will be doing that. So I'm standing here next to this super open body of water. This is the C18 Canal, and the C18 Canal runs directly through the historic Loxahatchee Slough. So if you guys don't recognize that word slough, what that means is essentially it is a river of grass, just like the Everglades. So it is a broad system of deep wetlands that moves water really slowly. And this special place where we are right now is the beating heart of the Loxahatchee River, the wild and scenic Loxahatchee River. This is one of only two federally designated wild and scenic rivers in the state of Florida. And this is the system that feeds it its water. Now, back in 1928, there was a devastating storm, a hurricane, and it caused Lake Okeechobee to overtop its banks, and hundreds of people.
And Miss Miller in the cafeteria, everyone.
Just an announcement.
So hundreds of people lost their lives, and what that caused was this effort by the federal government to drain the Everglades, and this was part of it. And so engineers are really smart people, and so what they did is they dug a ditch clean through the deepest part of the Loxahatchee Slough. It remains in place today because we live here, we live around this special place, and we still need our homes protected from flooding from hurricanes and storms. But so much restoration has happened in the last 20 years to not only restore the wetlands on either side of this canal, but to raise the control elevation in this canal to help restore those wetlands, and also to restore this super special place, the wild and scenic Loxahatchee. So that's kind of, you can tell, and you're going to be able to tell even more so when we get into the swamp and in the natural habitat, how different this man-made feature looks from what it should look like, which is these beautiful emergent wetlands that we're going to go explore. So with that, let's head over across the berm. We'll get out of the wind a little bit, and we'll get into the swamp. Let's go. So Alicia, if you could just pan over here and just give them a view really quick.
Benji, they
Yes.
would like to know how high that water gets right there.
How high?
So the water that's in the canal right now, we're in the height of the dry season. We're going to talk about that later. The water probably gets about 2 to 3 feet higher than it is right now in the canal. And we're going to explore that a little later when we're in the swamp. So, but you can kind of see this dramatic scar through the landscape that this canal creates. All right, now let's head into nature.
Hang on for the bumpy ride. Ooh.
All right, now Alicia.
Benji, before you get too far into the slough area, they'd like to know, what is that purpose of that river area?
The river or the canal?
The canal, I guess.
Yeah. The canal is to provide drainage and flood protection for all of our communities. Look, all of Florida, I mean, all of South Florida almost was a swamp at one point. And so since that hurricane in 1928 that killed several hundred people, and then we built these canal systems, we significantly drained the natural habitat and the wetlands all over South Florida. And that canal is one of the main reasons that our North County area was drained. So it is still in place because our water managers really need the ability to protect us when storms are coming from flooding. But what our water managers have also realized and have been so successful in doing in partnership with the county is adjusting water levels within that canal. They've put a structure, which is essentially, it's a gate that goes across the canal to hold water back. And so now they raise the water level to more natural levels that it would have been historically during times when they can, during the wet season and in the dry season. Right now, it's super important to hold water back and also to feed and trickle water to the Loxahatchee River, because the Lox River, because of all this drainage, is kind of starved for fresh water. And what we have in the river is what we call saltwater intrusion. There's not as much flow out, and so the ocean water is creeping further and further in. So Alicia, watch your step here on this fence.
Okay.
And we're going to get you, Alicia, to go around the other side so you're facing us and kind of reduce this wind noise. All right, everybody. So those of you that have been with us a time or two before, you've probably met Sally. Sally Channon is one of our scientists here at Palm Beach County ERM. She is a botanist, which means she studies plants. And so Sally, we've got kind of this really cool area because we've got like 3 different, extraordinarily different types of plants right in this one area. But before we get to that, all these plants are green, right? And so what are they doing right now to grow and reproduce, put out different flowers and seeds and all these different types of reproduction?
So the cool thing about plants is that they photosynthesize, and that's exactly what it sounds like. They take photons or light energy in order to synthesize themselves and create all the products that we use, that everything else that can't photosynthesize uses to get. So we get our energy and we get all the protein and everything that we need in order to make our own cells and run our own body. But so, the plants, the pigment chlorophyll has the ability to get excited from light energy, and that runs like a little engine inside it that it uses to synthesize everything that it needs. And it does it from really simple ingredients: water, carbon dioxide, some minerals in the soil, something we can't do. We need to eat starches and sugars and proteins and fats. We have to start higher up on the food chain.
Right. So this is really the basis of all of the rest of animal life, right? So
exactly.
So I'm going to ask a question to students right now.
Before you do, we have a question for Sally on here. How many different types of plants are there in Loxahatchee Slough Natural
In
Area?
Loxahatchee Slough, that I don't know.
Pull out your
I'm
list.
going to say probably on the order of vascular plants and maybe algae, something on the order of 300 to 400.
Wow.
And I'm not counting lichens, and I'm not counting fungus, mushrooms. I'm just counting the things that are kind of easy to, to see and to grab a hold of, not things that are just microscopic.
Right. Thank you. They like that answer.
So we kind of have a perfect example of the question that I'm going to ask right here, Alicia. I want to ask you all a question, then we're going to move on and give you all a little time to answer. So these plants that are photosynthesizing and creating food for animals like these lubber grasshoppers, this is the juvenile stage. These gorgeous black and yellow and red grasshoppers, these are juveniles, and these are the enormous yellow grasshoppers that you guys probably see in your neighborhood sometimes and on the sidewalk. But these guys are eating these plants to get food. And so my question for you guys is, what are plants called in kind of the food web? They're not decomposers like our fungi. There's something else. So my question is, what are plants called in the food web that we're going to explore today? All right, so
Benji, we got a couple more questions while we're waiting on those responses.
Mr. Friedman,
Yep, go ahead.
That was good.
Sorry, we had an announcement. So while we're waiting, and just so you guys know, students, you don't have to click out. We'll just keep switching the response poll, so to stay logged in. So they would like to know two different things. One, are there any parasitic plants that are in Loxahatchee Slough? And what is the most important plant in terms of necessary effects in the ecosystem for Loxahatchee Slough?
Whoa, man, wow. Okay, so
responses of autotrophs and producers coming in. Woohoo!
Right. So producers, that's exactly what I was looking for. So yes, kudos. What we have here, all these plants are producers. To answer the easy question, yes, we do have carnivorous plants here, and we're going to see those a little bit later. To your second question, I think it kind of depends on what animals you ask, right?
Yes.
Because different plants are really important for different animals. And so just to say what is the most important overall, oh man, for example, it is, right. Alicia reminded me, it's what I like to say a lot, which is it's complicated. I know we don't like that and we always want one answer, right? But as you guys know, taking your science classes, more often than not, the answer is it's complicated. And we're going to talk about some of these plants today. In fact, we're going to talk about one right now that is just to Sally's right. Before we talk about what this plant is, we kind of had to laugh over the past year because the flowers of this gorgeous plant kind of look like something, don't they, that we've seen in the news over the past year?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, is that weird, wild, or what? So, it just funny, different shapes in nature. Certainly looks like a coronavirus to me, but don't worry, this plant is not bad. This is an awesome plant. All my friends here are saying, don't say that word.
No, you're shaking it.
Oh, sorry. All right, so Sally, I want to kind of back out here a little more.
Do you guys see that?
Yes, definitely. So bring it closer.
And it's a whole, and what's that bush called, Benji and Sally?
So this is called a button bush. It's called a button bush. So Sally, if you can kind of, I'm going to step over and just watch this fence here. But if you can just kind of explain what kind of plant we're looking at here, which has the veins on the leaves and produces these flowers?
Okay, well, it's cool in the slough because we've got air or representative of everything in the plant kingdom. Every large type of thing, vascular and non-vascular plant. There's representatives here in the slough. This is, first of all, a vascular plant. Second of all, a flowering plant. All that stuff that looks like the coronavirus, that's a collection of flowers. And it is a dicot. So in the flowering plants, you have two large classifications: dicots and monocots. The dicots are the ones that usually have the netted veins, and monocots have parallel veins. Like the main veins run parallel to one another. You can see it in some of these grasses and sedges, which are all monocots. Basically, when these things are all seed bearing because they're flowering plants, so they produce seeds, and the seed has two leaves when it comes out. That's what makes it a dicot versus a monocot. Now, those things are all kind of generalized because occasionally you get some dicot that just produces one leaf when it comes out. So the real technical character they separate them on has to do with the pollen itself. So the pollen just has one groove or one pore on a monocot, and it's got three on a dicot.
Okay, very cool. So you mentioned monocot. So let's talk about that because we got plenty of those around, right?
Lots. So your grasses, your sedges. So here's Alicia's got her hands on it right now. Here's a good example of a monocot flower. So we'll probably see something else that has a more spectacular flower on it even than this button bush. But look at this. Each one of these things isn't just a flower, it's actually a whole collection of flowers stacked one on top of each other. And that's real typical of the grasses and the sedges from which we get grains, they're actually probably of monumental economic importance. So our flowering dicots are where we get all the fruits and everything, fruits and most vegetables that we eat. But the grains, so wheat and rye, are all coming from the seeds of the monocots.
Right. And so I wanted to show you guys what we're talking about here with the veining. So here on what you all are looking at on your left, so this is our dicot. And do you see how it's got those main veins, but then lots of branching veins? And then you have your duck potato here, one of our great wetland plants. And you see all of those veins are just going vertical. They're just going up and down the leaf. Whereas again, the veins here are kind of spidering all over the place. So Sally, two really, really cool kind of overarching types of plants. But we have a third type here that is like our dinosaur plant, right?
Ooh, I like dinosaurs.
Yeah, so
We've
that
almost
is
got two dinosaurs really, because we have both the ferns and we have gymnosperms, which are seed plants but
come
have
over here.
naked seeds.
While Sally is moving, we're going to have to move kind of slow through the swamp because it is really kind of squishy in here. If for some reason, and I'm sure Miss McGill will fill right in for us, but it is super hot out. And if we all of a sudden drop out, it probably means our phone overheated. So we'll jump right back on. But if that happens, I just want y'all to know what was going on. So Sally.
Now, Sally mentioned the word gymnosperms. Our middle school students may not recognize that word, or our high school students would. Could you maybe explain what a gymnosperm would be?
So a gymnosperm is a plant that's it's a seeded plant, just like flowering plants produce seeds. Only it produces seeds without having flowers. And the big advantage of something having seeds versus these ferns, which are really primitive, ferns reproduce by spores, which are they're lightweight, they can blow around and get around, but they're really kind of fragile. They don't have any hard coat on them. They don't have any fruit on them so that something would want to eat them and cart them across the continent. So gymnosperms are just things like your pines, cypress, that bear cones. So if something looks like it's got a cone on it, it's probably a gymnosperm. It's not going to produce any petals or any fancy flowers. And the ferns are really kind of cool because the flowering plants are only about, I don't know, 120 million years old evolutionarily. The ferns go back to 400 million years old. And this type of vegetation, the ferns, not this particular species, but this is what dominated the earth at the time of the carbon, what do they call it?
Carboniferous.
Carbonaceous, yeah. And so that's when all the coal was made, and that's when dinosaurs were the dominant sort of thing. So flowers came along during the Jurassic. So while the dinosaurs were out there, flowering plants did evolve, but it was dominated by these ferns. And that's really why they think the climate was so humid and even, because they don't have, those seeds can't, the spores can't withstand freezing and deserty conditions and all that sort of stuff. They're fragile.
All right.
Sally, they did ask a question about how do you know the ferns are actually that old?
How do you know what?
The ferns are that old.
Are that old?
Are that old? Oh, they find fossils. So, so there are fossils, not, I mean, again, not of this particular species, but ferns can leave pretty good fossils. And pretty much anything that you can make a nice, like, leaf print from in an arty setting is something, or anything that has veins in it and is vascular, which a fern is, can be caught in clay layers or whatever in such a manner that it leaves basically a print behind. So it doesn't have any bones, but those it will leave behind the pattern of its veins and its vascular structure.
Right. So let's. You guys ready to dive in the swamp?
Yes, definitely ready.
All right.
Do you want to describe the smell, Benji?
Oh, we will in just a second. I've got a good visual for you guys. All right, so Alicia, right here, I want you to come and kind of focus on this area. Maybe you can move over this way so it's not in your shadow. All right, so I want everybody to look at where my hand is and watch what happens and see if you can hear it too on the volume. Yeah, there we go. All right, ready? Alicia, tell me when it's focused. Okay. You guys see all those bubbles?
Yeah.
Right. So one of the really cool things about swamps is they're these enormous carbon sinks. And the reason why they're carbon sinks is because there is a super anoxic condition that goes on at the bottom of these swamps, meaning that it's very, very low oxygen. And so things decompose extraordinarily slowly because there's no oxygen in this system. The bubbles that are coming up as I push my hand into these swamp plants does not smell very good. So I love introducing people when we're out in nature to smells. Normally I'm looking for really good smells, but this isn't air like is above the water. What this is a gas called hydrogen sulfide. And so it smells pretty nasty.
Like rotten eggs.
Like rotten eggs, yes. That's a good way to describe it. Now, so Sally, what's going on here that creates this hydrogen sulfide gas? where when we step, it kind of gets released. There's kind of two things going on here. One of them is just we're in a swamp, right?
Right.
And
One
then
of
the other
them is
one is
we're in a
specific,
swamp,
right?
and it's and so there is, like you said, there's all this stuff. There's no oxygen, so it rots very slowly. Under those conditions, it produces hydrogen sulfide gas, and then you squish on it and release it. The other thing is this algae, which actually is a very strange algae because it looks. If you could see the whorls on it, it looks like a vascular plant. I mean, it's hard, it's crunchy. But this plant, this is a Chara, a species of Chara, and it lives. The Charas like to be in high water, low oxygen environments, and they store up the calcium and put calcium crystals in their leaves. So the thing actually feels harsh to the touch. You think of filamentous algae as just being slimy and really soft, but this stuff is not. It's kind of crunchy. And that process of putting that calcium in the leaves produces hydrogen sulfide. So if anyone wants to volunteer here, the leaves themselves have a very characteristic odor, and they sometimes call this musk algae.
Woo! Woo! Yeah. It smells like a creature that spent about a week in the swamp and then came into your living room. So Chara, really, really cool. We're going to go a little further, and I want to show you guys the water in the swamp because there's so many misconceptions about the swamp that we kind of want to try to dispel. And those of you that have been with us for months and months, this may sound familiar, but there's some really dramatic examples. So Alicia, if we can come over here, and then we also want to show you some of the carnivorous plants that live here in Loxahatchee Slough.
While you guys are walking, I'm going to go ahead and talk to the students really quick.
Sure.
So I see a lot of questions coming in about the attendance form. The attendance form will be available at the end. It will go across the bottom where you guys can type in using the Omnibar, the web address for the Google form, and it'll be available where you can use your phone and use the QR code reader, and it'll take you to the Google form. So do not fret. I promise the Google form will go out. Okay, everybody has to be on their school district account, not on their private account. That is why we are using Poll Everywhere. Everybody is to be using the Poll Everywhere to communicate with Benji, and we are not on the chat anymore, okay? Hopefully your teachers told most of you, because I think that's not the issue, but we need everybody who is on their private account to be on their school district account, please. All right, Benji. Sorry.
All right. Okay. So what we have right here is a couple of things. I want you to look. Sally, do you have that ruler?
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to look at the water here. As I put my hand down, you guys might be able to see how clear the water is. It is extraordinarily clear here in the swamp, and that's for several reasons, but one of them is that this is an incredibly low nutrient system. It's called oligotrophic. So the plants in here are just trying really hard to find any kind of nutrients they can. But the other thing is, when we're in the time of year that we're in right now, the dry season, the water levels are dropping, and they drop all the way down to the bottom of the swamp. And so you can kind of see my hands disappearing. And maybe you saw a fish just cruise right past me. So this is not the bottom of the swamp. This is this compilation of all these awesome plants. Here's some of our carnivorous plants we'll talk about in just a second. And then there's all this flocculent material, which is a combination of algae and detritus. So here's, let's see, 12-inch ruler. There, we're finally at the bottom. So what is that? That's about 7 inches deep. And only about 2 inches of it looks like water. But what we don't see is fish can swim all throughout here. You might see that little fish right there. Yeah, he's swimming around. But they can swim through all this flocculent as well. And so the vast majority of the animals, the critters, are living inside and amongst all of this flocculent. All right, so Sally, I think we've got some really good representations of two species here
Yeah,
of our carnivorous plants. So you guys can see this yellow flower and the purple flower. And these guys both come from the same genus of plant species, and they're carnivorous. And so, Sally, explain what we're looking at here and why they're carnivorous.
So we're looking at I mean, you can see the flowering stalk come up. Then you see long stems on both of them with multiple flowering stalks coming up. But here you have what passes for the branches and the leaves. And I don't know whether you can see it really well or not, but there are tiny little round blops on each of these leaves, and those are the bladders that this gets its name from, bladderwort. And those bladders have the capability of sucking and pulling in like tiny little larvae of flies and even protozoans, single-celled organisms that are out there. So that's what they're eating. They're not really big enough to like eat fish, but they're definitely big enough. Occasionally you can actually see something in the bladder even under small like 10 power magnification. So these plants live in low nutrient environments, and they supplement their nutrition by cheating. They get protein from eating from eating animals.
Right, which is one of the reasons, again, why they're so prolific in this habitat right here. Right, is
Yes.
We talked about it being oligotrophic, meaning super nutrient poor, and so these carnivorous plants do really well because they, like Sally said, can kind of cheat the system. Right over here, I just saw something that shows you how this is really low oxygen. And there was a fish that gulped water, and then there was a beetle that came up and whoop, got some air. Or the fish gulped air. Some fish have evolved to be able to do that. They'll gulp air and pass that kind of air and water mixture through their gills, and that'll help them breathe in these really low oxygen environments. But really the takeaways here is swamps are not what you think. They're not this muddy, disgusting mess. I mean, yeah, there's this kind of flocculent in there, but these are really crystal clear, amazing productive habitats. So, Sally,
But
I think
really quickly, there's a couple questions. They want to know, since the water is so clear, does it mean it's clean? And then you showed us a lot of green plants. Are there any flowering plants around there?
Well, these bladderworts are flowering right here. These tiny little carnivorous plants have these beautiful flowers. This is a purple bladderwort. And then we have another species of bladderwort. Most of them have these yellow flowers. But there's some flowering plants. And then if we back out, we're going to see some more flowering plants. But these right here, these water lilies, they have these incredibly beautiful flowers. Right here, these are our duck potato. The genus is Sagittaria, and they have these great, beautiful flowers. Sorry, I had a beetle in my shorts here. So yeah, flowering plants are all around. Some are flowering now, some are kind of out of season, but we'll see some of those water lily blooms as we walk. So right now we've got a bit of a walk, but we're going to go meet up with Kyla and check out what animals are living under the surface of the water here. So
while you're walking, we have a couple questions for you.
Yep.
Do carnivorous plants have chloroplasts? And are there any animals that actually eat carnivorous plants?
You hear that, Sally?
Do
carnivorous plants have chloroplasts?
Yes.
And are there any animals that eat the carnivorous plants?
Yes,
The carnivorous plants are basically supplementing their diet, if you will, by being able to capture something and getting nutrition that way. Getting protein contains nitrogen, and in these low nutrient environments, nitrogen is often a limiting factor in the growth of the vegetation. And yes, there are things that eat carnivorous plants. A lot of fish will pick at these plants, including at their bladders, and they too are taking advantage of the fact that the plants caught something that's nutritious for them as well.
Right, and probably another, like, what did we see out here, Sally, yesterday when we were scouting? That were flying in and landing and dabbling.
Oh yeah, ducks.
So ducks, waterfowl.
All right, Benji, you're getting some of the famous questions. Are there any alligators or snakes out there?
Oh boy, yes, yes to both.
Okay, you're leading the way.
Yes, absolutely. Watch yourself, Alicia.
I'm just trying to navigate some of these
so
holes.
This part of the swamp is really tough to walk through. One of the reasons is all these stumps you see, these were this terrible exotic called Melaleuca that we treated in place. We didn't want to bring heavy equipment in here because the habitat is so good already. But what we've got here is a bunch of these down logs and stumps that are hidden under the flocculent and making walking really kind of tough.
They want to know how deep the water is there.
Right, so, I mean, right now it kind of depends on where you step. I mean, right here, it's about ankle deep. I'm probably standing on a branch or an old stump. Right here, it's about mid-calf deep. And I kind of sunk in there. So it really kind of depends on where you put your foot.
They also want to know if it's dangerous to be walking around throughout that swamp area.
Is it dangerous?
Yes.
No, absolutely not. Now, I say that with a caveat. So the more you get into science, or the more that you just appreciate nature, what you're going to do is observe all these different patterns. Hopefully you're going to be interested in the animals you see. And the best way to dispel fear about things like alligators and snakes is to learn about them. So are there alligators in here? Absolutely. Down the swamp yesterday, we saw some tracks from an alligator that was easily over 10 feet long, probably 11, 12. There are some huge ones in here. However, what I know is several different things. Number one, alligators, if they're well fed, they do not want to bother with us, because when they're feeding on turtles and fish and everything else that lives in here and they're fat and happy, there's no chance they're going to take a risk by trying to take down something as big as you or I. And the reason is everything with predators is this cost benefit analysis. And if they get hurt, it's not like us where, you know, if we're lucky and we're nearby, we can go to the hospital, to a doctor, and get patched up and heal while, you know, mom and dad go buy us food and nurse us back to health. If an alligator gets hurt and it affects its ability to hunt, that alligator is probably not going to make it. And so it is only if one of these big predators is really kind of desperate that they're going to try to attempt to take something as big as you or I. And that's because there's a much bigger risk of them getting injured. And so it's just not worth it for them. Number two, when we're traveling through the swamp, even as I've got my back to, you know, what's behind me, I'm turning around. And as I'm looking around, I'm looking for signs. I'm looking for signs that larger predators are here. Like if a big alligator is here, we could see this pathway through the marsh and through all this chara and algae. So there's these giveaways that tell us, okay, there might be something that we really need to pay attention to here. So, you know, answers your question. Yeah. And that's the reason why I say that it is absolutely not dangerous what we're doing. But if you were to come out here in the swamp when the water's deeper, alligators could hide better, and you knew nothing about the biology of the predators, it could be potentially risky. But not what we're doing. We were in much more danger driving our cars here than we are standing in the swamp. All right, so let's get over here. We're going to do some rapid fire because we got about 20 minutes left. Those of you guys that have been with us before, you probably know that we like to talk about science in the first half, and then in the second half, we get to catching animals. So,
Benji, they want to know what the trees are out there.
Right, so these are cypress trees. The vast majority of the trees out here are cypress trees. This particular cypress tree in front of us is called a pond cypress tree. So pond cypress will be in very slow or not moving water. We have another cypress species called a bald cypress, which has more feathered leaflets. And that tree occurs more around rivers. So Kyla, we've got Kyla Carroll here. Say howdy, Kyla.
Hi.
So Kyla, where do you go to school?
I go to Duncan Middle School.
All right, so Duncan Middle School.
Hi,
How about next year?
again.
What's that?
She
I
said
said hi
hello.
for joining us.
All right, so Kyla's with us, and what we're going to do is we're going to check some fish traps, and we're also going to talk about what's going on right now and why this time of year is really, really cool. So I'm wondering.
Can I turn?
Yeah. So Kyla, do we want to check this trap real quick, see what's in here, and then we'll kind of talk about why this place is special, what's going on right now. So let's lift her up and see what we've got. All right, awesome. Okay, so we've got a Bonanza here, and what we've got is one of our top predators here in the swamp. So let's get this untangled. We'll put it back in the water. All right, so.
All right, we're putting a new reaction poll in there, so please go ahead and tell us what your reaction is to what Benji's about to be pulling out.
There is no cube nearby, Benji.
Okay, all right, we're just gonna have to do it without the cube. You guys hold that? Okay, let's see if we can say hi to some swamp characters here. Kylie, do you want to pull that apart for me?
Just call it on this side.
It's okay.
Ooh.
All right, Kylie, you want to take that? Okay, so what we have here is this awesome banded water snake. All right, and so this guy is a banded water snake. You can see that coloration on his skin, on his scales, and his belly is just gorgeous. Now I'm gonna get up closer to his head. You can see how mellow he's being right now. All right, so I'm just gonna hold his head here. And now we can see this amazing underside of this awesome swamp snake. All right, so banded water snake here. Alicia, I'm gonna kneel down and we're gonna talk a little more about this snake. So water snakes, these are champions of the swamp. This is a harmless snake. And we can tell that because if you can see that eye, that pupil, you can see that that pupil is round. It's round, and that is a dead giveaway that this is a harmless, non-venomous snake. Our cottonmouths and our rattlesnakes, they all have an elliptical eye like a cat, like your house cat has. But this guy has this beautiful circular pupil. So we know that this is a non-venomous snake. There's only one venomous snake in the state of Florida that has a round pupil, and it's a coral snake. Those are unmistakable. You can look them up. But that's the real easy way to tell venomous from non-venomous. You don't want to get close enough to look at their pupil in their eye. Then you could also just kind of look at their morphology. These are a heavier bodied snake. However, if a similar size snake, if this was a cottonmouth, its head would be about twice as wide. So this is kind of a chunky body for snakes that we see here. But again, if it was one of those venomous snakes, and you can see this guy's chill. He's mellow. He just wants to get away. I'm going to let him go because we're kind of messing with him plenty. So we're going to see him off.
Yeah, they like that.
Where? Hold on.
I want you all to watch how quickly this snake disappears. These water snakes are really specially designed to move through the swamp really efficiently. And he's gone. Right into that flocculent.
Whoa.
Not going to see him again.
Benji,
So-
they want to know what the rarest animal that you've seen out there is.
The rarest animal. Wow.
They're asking the hard ones today.
Yeah, right? I'm going to put my keys up in my pocket because I'm getting my shorts wet here. Man, the rarest animal. Oh, out here at Loxahatchee Slough. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we've got endangered wood storks out here, roseate spoonbills. Oh, there he is. He came back up, and now he's going away. So yeah, it's probably one of the bird species that we have out here. We've got some really cool ones. We saw, not that it's rare worldwide, but it's rare in the US, and that is a gray kingbird. We saw one the other day. And the cool thing about being in Florida is we're kind of at the edge of the subtropical zone. And so we get animals here in South Florida where we live that don't occur anywhere else in the lower 48 in the United States. And that's because they're coming up from the Caribbean. And that's this gray kingbird. It's a bird, it's about this big, it's a flycatcher. So it perches and it sallies about and catches insects on the wing. And they breed right around the coast of the peninsula of Florida. And we saw one the other day. That was a really cool find. All right, so Kyla, what else do we have in there? If you can kind of pick some stuff out. Here you go. Grab a couple of those fish in there. Not the beetles.
Not the beetles.
Not the beetles.
Benji, what's the most common animal that you guys find out there, or that you would think would be out there?
Well, most common is probably what we're kind of looking at
Yeah,
here. Let's get all right.
they're all stuck.
Here we go. Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to pour it out right onto this thing. Whoa!
Hi, beetles.
So we got beetles, we've got tadpoles, we've got fish. Lots of fish in here. So we've got mosquito fish right here, right? And this is actually, unfortunately, this is one of our exotics. This is a problem we have in Florida, is the aquarium trade. So this is kind of something important to talk about with Kyla, though. So this right here is a cichlid. It's one of these Central South American species. They're incredibly voracious, and they eat our native fish. Now, Kyla, can you tell us what you have in your house?
We have a freshwater fish tank with different fish that we find in the swamp.
Right, and so these swamp fish that are native here to Florida, like, are they colorful?
Kind of. It depends on what fish it is.
Right, but I know you've got like some golden top minnows in there.
We have some really cool.
Yeah, so we do have these incredibly colorful fish here in Florida. So if you're gonna think about a fish tank, think about buying native. Looking for these sailfin mollies, the golden top minnows, the least killifish. That's a lot of what we have here. So Kyla, I'm gonna let these tadpoles go here. Alicia, if you want to, Kyla, show them the legs on that. So this guy is changing right now. So this is one of our amphibians. If you guys were with us last month.
Where can you point out those legs?
Yeah, you learned about amphibians and how they are really, really specialized. Super cool. So that is a tadpole that starts its life in the water and is changing into a frog right before our eyes. So he's kind of breathing through this really, really porous skin with all these blood vessels. And so it just uses the oxygen that's in the swamp there, and then it can go up and gulp air as well. All right, so Kyla, that was so cool with the snake. We've got 10 minutes left. So let's talk about why Loxahatchee Slough is so important right now. So Alicia, okay, sorry.
I know.
So Kyla, what kind of season are we in right now? We talked about it a little bit.
We're in the dry season currently.
Yeah. So the dry season, we have hurricane season, the wet season, but we also have the dry season here in Florida. And so what happens during the dry season in our swamps here?
The water starts receding back and the fish are coming together because there's nowhere else to go.
Right. So in the wet season, what are they doing?
In the wet season, they're mostly reproducing because they have so much room to spread around because of how high the water is.
Right, and so we can tell right here on this tree, I'll kind of show it, Alicia, if you can back up just a bit. But there's kind of this faint line on this tree right about here, where you can see above there, you start to get this white bark, and below there, the bark is much more brown. And so, Kyla, what is going on with this difference between the brown bark and then the light bark? What is that light bark?
So the light bark is covered in lichen mostly, and the lichen doesn't like going underwater for long periods of time. So it mostly stays up above the water level.
Right, and so as biologists, even though the water is really low right now, what this tells us, without the water even being there, is that in the wet season, so go ahead and kneel down here, Kyla, in the wet season, the water gets up this deep. So another, 2 feet up. And that's kind of what happens in these slough systems is the water will fluctuate. So I want to talk real quick and give you guys an analogy about what's going on right now. So Kyla was talking about the drawdown, right? And we caught all these fish and also some predators in our fish trap. The reason why we caught so many fish is because of that concentration, right? And so I want you all to think about, back when you used to have full classrooms and everybody was in class. So you got a bunch of people, but there's enough room and it's spread out, right? What's happening right now in the dry season in these wetlands, it's like if you got a full class of all of your students and friends, and then your teacher said, all right, everybody's got to squeeze into the closet. And that's what's going on in the swamp right now, right? And so that concentration is massively important to some really special animals that are here right now. And so what are some of those?
Yeah, we have the herons, the little blues, and the snowies, and wood storks, and all of them.
Yeah. And so what are they doing right now?
They're breeding, reproducing, because there's so much food. There's an abundance of them all together in one place because of how shallow the water is.
Right. And so right here at Loxahatchee Slough, our site manager was out monitoring one of these rookeries. That's what these groups of nests are called, is rookeries. And our site manager documented at one, and we have 2 or 3 here in Loxahatchee Slough, but at one she counted 73 little blue heron nests. And it was over 90 nests total right here in Loxahatchee Slough. And so this large prey availability, so what does that give the opportunity for them to do?
It gives them the opportunity to have babies. So they have these small little fluff balls, baby things, in these nests because there's so much of the food.
Right. And so in the wet season, they could never catch enough food, right? Exactly. So that is why the restoration of these natural areas and these swamps and wetlands is so important, is because we need this natural fluctuation of water so that our wading birds can come back and reproduce. And I can tell you that 20 years ago, those rookeries were not here. And these birds are incredibly special, and what a success story. It kind of tells us what we can do, because were they always around?
No, we had plume hunters. I can't remember how long ago, but there were plume hunters a while ago who hunted the birds to nearly extinction for their plumes. They long, fancy feathers for ladies' hats.
Right. So fancy ladies wanted these fancy hats with these feathers so that they can go to these balls and things like that. And that was about 100 years ago. The Audubon Foundation was instrumental in getting the plume hunting trade halted. And since then, the birds have come back. We really messed them up again with all the drainage of the wetlands, but now that we're getting it right, they're coming back again, and what that tells us is nature is resilient. We've got like a couple of minutes left, I think. So we've got 6 minutes left, and we have, I think, 3 more traps that we get to check. So let's go. You guys want to see some more animals?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Let's go swamping over here.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is, why don't frogs stay in the water all of their lives? So you just showed us that tadpole, so why do they become land dwelling?
Say that again?
Why do frogs do not stay in the water their whole life? Why do they go through their metamorphosis?
So it really depends on the amphibian. And some frogs, there's actually an exotic frog that we see in the scrub. And they are one of these rare amphibians that doesn't lay their eggs in the water. They are a frog, but they generally hang out in these really moist areas of decaying trees and stumps. And that gives them enough moisture so their skin doesn't dry out. And then we have other things like tree frogs, right? So tree frogs, most of them will put their eggs into water. Some of them will actually put their eggs into carnivorous plants like pitcher plants or bromeliads that hold water. But they live the rest of their lives out in the trees, and they rely on these kind of humid climates to keep moist enough. So amphibians are really, really, really cool animals because there's this really broad range of what they can do and how they survive. Anything else? We're almost to another trap here. Heather, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm looking through some of the questions. I think that you've answered everything that they have on here.
Awesome, awesome.
Those are
All right,
great questions.
So we're coming up here to this cypress area. We've got a few more traps in here, and we've got a cube that's full from some other traps that we set and checked. We just don't have time for all of them.
So we're entering cypress trees?
All right, so Kyla, I doubt we have anything in here. This is one that we emptied out already, but we wanted to reset it and see if we caught anything in about the hour that it's been soaking. So let's lift that up and see if we got anything.
Awesome fish.
Nice. So just in the hour that we've been hanging out and talking, you know, there's such an abundance of fish here in the slough that just in an hour we got some more fish. So we've got a beetle, and we've got one of those cichlids, and we've got a bunch of these mosquito fish, these gambusia. You can tell them, the females I believe have this little black dot on the side of them. Super important fish. They absolutely do what their name implies. They eat mosquito larvae and other critters. So yeah, it just kind of shows you that was only soaking for an hour. The rest of these traps have been soaking overnight.
Ben, we have a question that just came in. How does the swamp ecosystem help those organisms in the swamp?
Say it again.
How does the swamp ecosystem help those organisms? So why can't those organisms live in a different ecosystem? What's the benefit of the swamp?
Right. I mean, so you know, the animals that utilize the swamp have really evolved to take advantage of these different conditions. You know, that's what evolution is all about, is these animals changing over these great periods of time to really maximize their ability to do well, to reproduce in different environments. So, you know, animals in here have adapted to become tolerant of these really low nutrient conditions, these really low oxygen conditions. So yeah, it really depends on where you are, whatever specific habitat. The creatures that use that are the ones that have adapted over millennia to be able to thrive in these environments.
So adaptation.
All right, yeah. Last one, and then we got a cube full of stuff as well.
All right, let me.
Oh my gosh!
Whoa!
All right, we got tons of fish, and we got another snake. Okay, let's hang tight. Let's get this thing off. Heather, let's let the students take a poll here. Do we just want to let this snake go, or do you want to see another water snake?
We want to see another water snake.
Okay.
Hold on, Benji.
All right. So.
I'm navigating, and I'm not navigating wonderfully. I was trying to give them the attendance form code at the same time, but
oh,
I can't
I'm sorry.
at the same time with it.
All right, Kyla. So we're going to do the same thing. I want you to kind of help just pull that off, but I want to wait and see if, there we go. So we're going to let him come up like that.
I promise, guys, I'll put the QR code back up in another 30 seconds or so.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Come on, buddy.
Oh, he is not as docile as the last one. He's
no. So this is another one of these banded water snakes. Whoop, there we go. Got him. All right, same snake, banded water snake, but I want you to come over here in the light, because this is one of these cool things about these snakes, is how different the same species can look. You guys remember how dark that other one was with all of those different really light bands? But look at all the browns and greens on this snake. Now it's another banded water snake, same species, but it looks different. Look at that belly. Same with those orange red dots on the side. So cool and so beautiful. And look at that eye. Again, we can tell, circular eye, totally harmless. Totally harmless. So I'm gonna let him go, and Kyla, let's see what else we got. All right, you guys want to see him go into this flocculent? This is kind of really cool. He's gonna disappear.
Yes.
All right, is it clear?
Yep, yep.
Oh, he's hanging out. Nice. So cool. All right, Kyla, what do you got in there? And then I'm gonna.
There he goes. Look at his head on top of it.
Kyla, we got some more fish in there. You want to dump
Yeah.
them out in my hand here?
Got a lot of fishes.
Whoa! Whoa! Oh, so tons of these cichlids, the beetles. I'm gonna let the beetles kind of get out of my hands because they can bite. But we do have a lot of these cichlids. That's kind of a bummer to see. Again, these are some of our exotics, right, Kyla, that really decimate the populations of our natives. Not a ton we can do about them because they're here. All we can do is just restore these habitats and really hope that our native fish populations do as well as they can. And they're still here. They're still thriving. So, all right, one last thing to check, and then I know we got to go, but I want to show you what was in the other 3 traps. So, Alicia, come on over
I
here.
got a question for you, Kyla. Do you have one of those exotics in your aquarium?
I don't think so. We don't have any fish.
Ooh. Okay, let me.
Hey, look at what we got! Another one. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna let this snake go. Another banded water snake. This is a little guy, much smaller. Again, notice the difference in coloration. This one's darker again. Same round pupil, same beautiful underside. And I'm gonna hold this up. Here he goes. He's just gonna go right next to my legs. We'll let him hang out there. He's not gonna hurt anybody. Hold this. All right, so the other thing I want to show you is what was in these 3 traps. All right, so Kyla, what do we got here?
Frogs, crayfish, and more fish.
Right. So we got frogs. We got the adult frogs here. And so kind of what we're seeing here, y'all, is the food chain in action. These beetles, these are called predatory diving beetles, and they will actually predate different fish. We've got frogs here, and frogs will literally eat anything they can fit into their mouth. The crayfish on the bottom of the cube are eating detritus, so they're kind of part of this decomposition portion of the food chain, the food web. Just so many cool stories to tell here. Snails in there that eat algae and then become food for birds and other animals. All right, so I know we're past time. I'm gonna put this down. Okay, Alicia. Woo.
Okay, let me just see. Nope, I don't think so. Okay, I thought we could get a view, but.
All right. I feel like we're always rushing. We run out of time. There's so much cool stuff to talk about. I really sincerely hope you guys enjoyed our adventure here in the swamp in the Loxahatchee Slough. This is our biggest natural area, almost 13,000 acres in size. I really hope you guys take a moment, go to our website, pbcnaturalareas.com, find the natural area near you. They're all over the county. Get out, explore, and connect with nature. The other thing, Heather, in your solicitation email, did you include the YouTube video that we did about the nesting wadybirds?
No, I did not include that. If you send that out, I will send that out with the follow-up with the attendance form and the additional pictures.
All right, so look for that attendance form and look for the YouTube link. We did a video on the nesting wading birds here from last year, and you can get up close and personal and meet these awesome birds. So we'll be back next month. We've got an awesome trip planned for you. I think we're going to Lake Worth Lagoon. So the estuary, we're going to be in a completely different habitat. I want to say thanks, huge thanks to Kyla. Kyla, thank you.
Kyla.
Sally, thank you so much. You guys,
Sally.
thanks for exploring.
Thank you, Sally.
we'll see you next month. Any questions before we go, Heather?
No questions coming through.
Alrighty. Thank you guys
Thank you so much, Benji.
All right,
Thank
Benji,
you,
you made
everybody.
it. Great job.
Yes.
Woo!
Go get your
Thank
vaccines.
you.
Go get your vaccines.
All right,
guys.
bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. All right, everybody, please make sure that you fill out the attendance form. There is a code scrolling across the bottom that you can type in if you do not have access to being able to read the QR code, or you can go ahead if you have a QR code reader or a phone that allows the camera to read the QR code. You are more than welcome in the next few seconds to go ahead and zoom in on this QR code, and it will take you straight to the Google form for attendance. We do not have the ability to send a link, so please make sure you're either using the QR code or you are typing in the information at the bottom, https://forms.glE/3HXN-G6CQ7VZH619Y8. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.